Hello everyone! In this video we're going to be talking about some common errors that people make with arrays. Remember that arrays are collections of variables, so that if we make an integer array, what we have is a group of integers. And depending on the size of the array, we can have a few integers or a lot of integers. And like any other variable, we need to initialize all of the values in the array before we use them. So let's see what happens if we don't. I'm using our blank test program to do some short demonstrations. We're going to create some numbers array. We won't initialize. And then we'll see what happens if we try to use the array. So this is just a short little traversal from the beginning of the array to the end where we try to print out each value. And we can see that there's nothing really recognizable in our array. It's just a bunch of random numbers, and so these are just what happens to be in memory at the array's locations, those 5 integer locations that the array has gotten. So of course we can fix that by doing an initialization. Going to each value of the array and setting the element at that index to some initial value. So that when we run the print this time, we see all of the initial values of the array. Let's look at the next one. Another common problem that people try to do frequently in response to this one is they'll try to assign the array a value rather than an element of the array. So it's important to keep those two things distinct. Numbers is the name of the array. It's a grouping. Numbers at some index is a single integer, and we can assign those things. We cannot assign the collection a single value. And this one results in a compile time error. It's going to tell us that it can't even compile this. It says incompatible types when assigning to type int size 5 from type int. So it's telling you there's a size mismatch. This one is one integer. This one is a group of integers. But the most common type of array error is called array index out of bounds. And that's when we try to access a value that's not part of the array. So here's a quick example where we've declared an array of size 5, given it 5 initial values, and then we try to print an index that doesn't exist. Remember, valid indices start at 0 and go to size -1. So this would be at index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Index 5 is not part of the array. It doesn't exist. So let's see what happens if we try to access an array index that doesn't actually exist. We have our array. We know that it has values 5, 7, 6, 9, and 10. If we try to access the array at index 5, we're getting this value, which is not 5, 7, 6, 9, or 10, because it's not part of the array. It might seem obvious when we're doing it this way that 5 is clearly beyond the bounds of the array, but sometimes this same error can be a little bit harder to spot. For example, when it's used in a loop. In this case, we have the same array, the same contents, and we're traversing the array using this loop. And the problem is actually here instead of here. The problem is our control statement, which allows I to become equal to 5, which is beyond the bounds of the array. So let's try this one. So now when we run this one, we have the 5 values of the array, and then an extra value which is not part of the array and shouldn't be included. So these are the common errors that people make when dealing with arrays. You have to treat the array as a collection. If you want to access a single element, you need to use the correct index. And pay careful attention to your controls when you're using loops to traverse the array. In our next chapter, we'll expand our knowledge of arrays to 2-dimensional arrays. I'll see you then.